Hi, I'm Nick and this is the TBT channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video, we're gonna look back into history. Bit of rose tinted nostalgia, a bit of wow, that was amazing, but we're also going to look at the present and into the future all in one. How, I hear you cry. Back in the 1980s, a company called Saxby Palmer started selling guns using at the time I think it was a BACS cartridge system, soon to turn into the TACS cartridge system, a tandem air cartridge. What it was a small capsule that contained air with a screw-on nose cone that contained a pellet. It was effectively a tiny self-contained PCP. That's what it was. And what it meant was possibilities were endless. You're only limited by your imagination as to what you could turn into a gun. For example, you could just take a piece of plastic and go pop. And if you remembered to put the damn tack into it, you could turn it into a gun. It's that simple. Here is the cartridge. There. That's it. It's a little air cylinder that you compress using a pump like this. You put a pellet into the front piece there, and it looks like a centre fire round. It is the same dimensions as a 357 Magnum round, and it fits into a 357 Magnum revolver. But the action of pushing the pin in the centre fire pin forward, releases the air, out comes the air, out it goes, bang, pop, wallop, you've made a gun. And I think the first one was the Saxby Palmer Orion 6. Now, I remember when they first came out. I remember when they were first in the magazines, and oh my God, did I want one of those. It was brilliant, a 6-shot revolving air pistol with good power, you know. It was all things to all men, but it was bloody expensive. This, just in case you want, I had a piece of, I'll show you the other piece of the barrel in a minute, but I had an offcut of barrel and I didn't know what to do with it, so I just I machined it so it accepted one of these. I made a bit to go on the back that's got a thing there, and it's got about 2.5 inches of 2.2 barrel inside of there. I don't know why. I suppose it could be good if you're kind of up close and personal finishing off rats. I'll do something with it at some point. That was just, I don't know, I was bored on a Sunday, I think is why I did that one. But basically anything you wanted to could be turned into a gun using this. And the guns that were available at the time were revolvers. They were made predominantly by Weihrauch. Not many people know this. People think they were Saxby Palmer, later Brocock. They were the importers. Weihrauch made the bulk of the pistols that were used for that. The Orion 6 was actually based on the HW38T 6-inch, their target gun. And I think the specialist was just the HW38, or it might have been the HW357 Hunter. But they still make them. Weihrauch still make revolvers. They're quite big in the powder burning world. In fact, I've got my wife has got a HW60 or 66 rimfire bolt action rifle. They're good rifles, they're good guns, though bizarrely their revolvers aren't the best. They're quite low on the budget side, and they have a budget arm as well called Arminus or Melcher, which are their more budgeter variants of the budget revolvers that they make. So all of a sudden, let me find an advert in here. This is April 1995 Airgun World. As you know, I've got lots of these magazines, and we've got a full page advert there. There we go. These are the guns I'm saying about. We're trying to read upside down here. I can't read those upside down. We've got the Cobra. We've got an Orion 3 Model 52 now. I did actually and have actually had several of these over the years. I've had a Python. I've had the Cobra. I've had Orions, I've had the Specialist, but the one I always wanted was the Model 52, and I never got one. It's teeny tiny. In fact, this is the ME Magnum, which is made by Melcher, which is their, as I say, Weihrauch's budget brand. It's very budget. It's all alloy, apart from a steel liner inside of the barrel there. It's all alloy. This was a longer gun. I've had this years, and it was never particularly good. I bought it because I could, because these were banned in 2004, I believe, in the UK. All guns that fire the TACS cartridge, remember that, that's important, were made Section 5 in the UK, which meant you could own it. You had to apply for a firearms certificate to own it. You could keep it, but you couldn't sell it, give it away, or trade it within the UK. Remember that. That is important too. We'll come back to that. The only way to dispose of it was to take it to a Section 5 firearms dealer, and they could either deactivate it or destroy it, or so people think. So back in 1995, there were lots of these. We even had rifles. There was the Safari. This was a single shot. They later made a Predator, which was a 5-shot bolt action. And there was the Sabata here, which had a rotary. It was basically a long-barreled revolver with a shoulder stock. You can get most of these in centerfire or black powder nowadays as well. But the pistols was the thing. As I say, they were made by Weihrauch, or Weihrauch's cheap version. But there was one guy, Michael Torn, I think he's still going, Wisbeach, is it Wisbeach Shooting Supplies or Wisbeach Gun Supplies? He was converting Piettas and Ubertis to use these. So rather than just a monkey metal revolver, I mean, these were okay. They were fine, they were fun. But they still weren't particularly cheap. But if you spent more, you could get a real gun that had been converted. But anyway, we get to 2004, and in the UK they're banned for various reasons. There are reasons, whether they're good reasons or not. I'm not getting into that. I'm not gonna play that game. That doesn't really matter. So in the UK, you can no longer get them. Everywhere else in the world, we can. They're still made. You can still buy them new. They're still there. They're still. Now, I say it rocked my world. I thought it was absolutely amazing. A revolver that you could... It's quite a faff, you know. For a start, I think these were about £5 each. And your gun came with enough to fill it up. But you went out in the garden after charging it. Bang, 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 bang. Oh, that was fun. 10 minutes later, you're ready to do it again. Yeah. CO2 kind of would have taken over anyway, I believe, naturally. But it was the different things that you could do with this that really made it brilliant. Like I say, the Michael Torn ones. Also, we had the Fox rifle, which was like a Day of the Jackal, and you could put it together and it was like a walk-in stick with a little stock on it, put a scope on it, and that was brilliant. And then there was now this one's important, the Harper micro pistol. It was about that long, and they were advertised, I don't know, there might even be an advert for it in this magazine. I don't know. I haven't specifically looked, but I've only just remembered about it. But what that was, it didn't use the whole part. It just used the air part on that's the rear of it, and that's screwed direct. You put your pellet direct into the barrel. That screwed on the back of it. Then a little thumb piece went on the back, and you held it, and you pushed that in with your thumb, and that fired it. Strictly speaking, the Harper micro pistol doesn't come under the terms of the TACS ban because it doesn't use a tack, it only uses the air part. Not many people know that, and I think a lot of them have been destroyed because people thought they weren't allowed to have them. You are. But certainly the revolvers and the rifles that were made went onto Section 5. Now, it wasn't particularly well advertised that it became Section 5. If you were into your shooting, then you knew. But there were several people who came a cropper later because they'd bought an air pistol some point in the 80s or early 90s or whatever. It had gone in a drawer, they'd got on with fishing or whatever their normal hobbies were, and then discovered after 2004 they were suddenly in possession of a Section 5 firearm without realising it, and it did happen. And also the story is, the well-known story, and everybody will say this, and I'm sure people will correct me in the comments down below and tell me I'm wrong, which I'm not, but people believe that you cannot pass on your Brocock TACS pistol, or Saxby Palmer TACS pistol, or Weihrauch TACS pistol. You can, and I know several people who've done it. You can give it to a Section 5 firearm dealer and he can export it, which means my fella here who imports guns from the UK can import them. The problem is with that, they've got no real value. These, I think these are about 120 euros new, you know, so they don't have an awful, they were a lot more expensive in the UK, surprise, surprise, but they don't have an awful lot of value, so it's not necessarily worth doing it. But another route people have taken, and I know people around me that have done it, is they've had their guns on Section 5 in the UK, then they've moved to France and they've contacted their FEO and said, I'm permanently exporting it. And the consensus seems to be among the FEOs, good bloody riddance to it, because it's just a pain in the arse as far as they're concerned. So you can bring it to France. If you have a property in France, holiday property, or you're going to move here, you can bring it and say, I have a holiday property, or I'm going to move to France, permanently export it. FEO will say, fine. If you don't, you can bring it to France and you can give it to a friend who lives in France and say, I've permanently exported it to my friend who lives in France, I'll use it when I go there. The FEO will say, fine. You can go to Calais, you can flog it to the first person you see as you get off the boat if he wants to buy it from you, because it's perfectly legal to have it. You go home, you tell them it's exported. They say, that's fine. They would rather you did that, I am sure. So there are lots of people who still have these on Section 5, and lots of them really don't want the hassle and expense of keeping renewing their licence for the sake of an air pistol. If you don't want to destroy it, you can contact me confidentially by email. I can give you advice on how to do that legally, in conjunction with your CEO or an RFD, Section 5 RFD if required. Nothing underhand, nothing below board. Or is it all above board? If everything's above board, is anything else below board? Anyway, so that's that. You don't have to destroy it. You don't have to hand it into the police station. There are alternatives. Please let me know if you want to do it. And if you have one of those Harper micro pistols, please let me know. I'd love one. But other things, what I've done with these, you may have seen this. My bit of offcut that I've got there is after this. This here is a piece of 2.2 barrel that again I've machined at one end to accept one of those. This one's machined with that part open so you can see the workings, because it was for a video I did a long time ago and I wanted people to see how it worked, so I did that cutaway, but it works perfectly with the cutaway. It makes no difference in performance, so I've never bothered replacing it. When I get some bits of barrel I'll make more. For myself here, legally, obviously. But what this is for is, this is my empty double-barreled Hammer 410 shotgun, which is on which barrel? That's on that barrel, that's on that barrel. An absolute delight. Who doesn't like a 410? Who doesn't like a side-by-side 410 and a Hammer 410 at that? It's an absolute dream little gun. And the best thing is it only cost me 75 euros. Who'd have thought you could pick one of these up for that kind of price? But even with the little 2-inch cartridges, sometimes it's a little bit noisy and a little bit OTT for in the garden, which is why I made that. What I've done is effectively make a combination gun. And I have done a video on this, specifically just on this. You can go back and find it. A combination gun is usually a 410 over a 2.2 rimfire, or a 12 bore over a 243 Winchester or something like that. So you've got two barrels, you've got a bullet and a shot, and that's it. So effectively whatever jumps out in front of you, you've got something to deal with it. And I did that, but I've got it with 410, and by putting that in there, that is the correct size, fit and shape to accept that there, which then means I've got 410 on one side and a 2.2 air rifle on the other. I think I shoot it on the other video, the full video I did of it. It's a lot of fun, but it's really 10 meters 10 can territory, not rat shooting or anything like that. If I'm doing rat shooting, it's use the 410 or get a 9mm shotgun out, which is another video I've got to do. So that's it. I wanted to talk about cartridge pistols because I keep reading repeatedly, oh, you've got to destroy it, you've got to hand it in, you've got to do this, or you can pay, I think it's £250 to have it deactivated, whatever. There are other alternatives. If you have one, if you want to know about the alternatives, legal alternatives, please get in touch. And that's it. I'm not going to do any shooting with these because I've done shooting with that and another one. Doing shooting with that's pointless, you might as well throw the bloody thing. But yes, hopefully at some point I'll have more of these and we'll look into it then. But thank you so much for watching. I hope this has answered some questions that people have. Like, subscribe, hit notifications. I'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.